Valuing a single piece of real estate demands meticulous attention. An appraiser analyzes the individual parcel, the structures, and the hyper-local market to arrive at a single number. Now imagine applying that precision to an entire metropolis. A government cannot evaluate properties one by one when valuing millions of specific parcels simultaneously. The solution is mass appraisal. This is the practice of appraising multiple properties as of a given date by uniformly applying standardized methods and techniques across an entire jurisdiction. Governments rely on this methodology to administer ad valorem property taxation, equalize revenue streams, and distribute financial grants to local authorities. In the Philippines, this massive operation operates under the explicit framework of Philippine Valuation Standards Guidance Note 100. Mass appraisal functions as a distinct statistical discipline. It bridges the gap between individual property rights and the absolute necessity of municipal revenue collection. Because these mass assessments directly dictate how much individual citizens pay in taxes, any calculation error immediately results in public inequity. To guarantee fairness, the entire procedure is tightly constrained by international valuation standards and local legislation, specifically the Real Estate Service Act. Compliance with these laws requires eliminating individual human intuition from the process. Assessors must rely entirely on a rigid, testable architectural framework. An equitable property tax system must be engineered from the ground up, starting with strict prerequisite infrastructure. Before calculating a single number, a mass appraisal system requires 6 structural elements to be legally and technologically operational. First, the jurisdiction needs a legal framework that actively defines and protects property rights, paired closely with a comprehensive digital inventory recording every parcel of land. With that base established, the jurisdiction must collect a continuous flow of market data to determine accurate baseline valuations. Next comes the human element, deploying sufficient resources and trained personnel to implement the methodology across the region. Finally, the system requires continuous database maintenance and active sampling processes to ensure the valuation models remain consistent over time. Without this complete infrastructural bedrock, any algorithmic valuation built on top of it lacks legal defensibility. Once the infrastructure is secure, the operation moves into an 8-step mass appraisal process that transforms raw data into actionable tax indices. The pipeline begins by identifying the specific properties, defining the market area based on how buyers and sellers actually behave, and pinpointing the key characteristics driving local supply and demand. The 4th step requires developing a mathematical model structure that maps out exactly how those market characteristics interact to create value. The 5th step is the analytical engine of the entire system, calibration. Calibration is the exact process of analyzing massive sets of property data to determine the specific mathematical parameters, or weights, operating within the valuation model. The final steps apply that calibrated model to the individual properties, validate the performance continuously at discrete stages, and reconcile the final results. Executing this strict 8-step pipeline ensures that 2 identical properties in the same neighborhood are valued using the exact same logic, removing any possibility of individual assessor bias. The ultimate output of this pipeline must align with a statutorily mandated valuation basis, most commonly market value. Under Republic Act No. 12001, market value is specifically defined as the estimated amount a property would exchange for between willing, knowledgeable parties in an arm's-length transaction. However, Section 40 of Guidance Note 100 addresses a major professional misconception regarding how this market value is utilized. Mass appraisal for property taxation is completely divorced from the revaluation procedures used for corporate financial reporting. Variations in property values between the two systems are expected. Ad valorem taxation relies on specific legislative requirements for scale and uniformity that accounting standards do not share. An assessor's objective is municipal equalization, not auditing corporate balance sheets. The systems serve entirely different functions and cannot be used interchangeably. The final tangible output of this entire mass appraisal operation is the assessment roll. This document contains the exact details of the assessment, the value definitions, property ownership, and the specific date the valuation comes into force. The roll requires periodic adjustments and alterations to maintain currency as market conditions shift. To prove the assessment roll is equitable, the system must pass 2 strict statistical tests. This proximity target visualizes appraisal level. It measures the direct distance between the mass assessments generated by the model and actual transaction prices in the market. Beside it, this scatter plot illustrates uniformity, providing a strict statistical measure of valuation consistency across the entire portfolio of properties. High appraisal level and tight uniformity provide the quantifiable proof needed to guarantee that the tax burden is distributed fairly among citizens. Delivering that proof brings us to the professional responsibility of the valuer finalizing the assignment. Under International Valuation Standard 106, the documentation and reporting process demands exhaustive transparency. The valuer must explicitly document the precise valuation models deployed, the raw data inputs utilized, and defined characteristics of the market. They must also disclose the scope of work, clearly list any extraordinary assumptions necessary for the analysis, and reference how individual properties are tracked in the digital record. Firmly, any departure from the instructions in Guidance Note 100 is prohibited unless mandated by statutory provisions or amended appraisal contracts. Mass appraisal functions as a highly regulated, statistically calibrated science. It is engineered to carefully balance a government's revenue requirements with absolute defensible equity for the taxpayer.